Hi everyone. Let's take a look at section 10 of chapter 17, and this is going to be taking a look at a new gland, which is going to be the pancreas. So remember, the pancreas is one of those that's not a major endocrine organ, but yeah, it secretes some major hormones, right? Absolutely. But pancreas is going to be one of those that has another function in another system, the digestive system, but it does have a huge role in the endocrine system, which we're going to be taking a look at here. We'll start off by looking at anatomy. We're going to be taking a look at the histology of the little pancreas cells that secrete the hormones. And then we're going to be taking a look at the action of insulin and glucagon. And then in another video, we're going to be taking a look a little bit more at diabetes. So let's first take a look at the pancreas. It sits behind the stomach, and as you can see, kind of between the duodenum right here and then the spleen. They already took the stomach out, so you can't really see it that way. But again, it has exocrine and endocrine activities. We'll be taking a look at this in the digestive system, these acinar cells. Most of the pancreas is the acinar cells. I think it's about 90% are going to be these acinar cells that are going to secrete these different enzymes and that are going to help, and other things that are going to help with digestion. So we'll take a look at that later on. What we're going to focus on are going to be one of my favorite words in science, Langerhans. We're going to be taking a look at these Langerhans cells, or islets of Langerhans. And if you don't want to say Langerhans, they're also called pancreatic islets, whichever one you want to say. But they are going to be these clusters of endocrine cells that have alpha cells, beta cells, delta cells, F cells. We're really only going to be looking at the alpha and beta cells, because the alpha cells are going to be the ones that is going to secrete glucagon, and then we're going to be taking a look at the beta cells, and they're going to be the ones that are going in and secreting insulin. You do have a couple of other hormones secreted from delta cells and F cells that we're not going to be taking a look at. So let's first take a look at one of the main functions of these two hormones is to maintain glucose levels. There's our magic number of what glucose needs to be in the bloodstream, and insulin and glucagon is going in and making sure that we can maintain those normal glucose levels. Because we'll talk about how when you have chronically high levels in the bloodstream of glucose, it can go in and cause problems with blood vessels, kidneys, and then we'll talk about how if you have low levels, and actually can cause problems with, you'll feel very lethargic, you'll have some mental impairment that's going on, physical impairment, but also eventually it can lead to death. So we'll take a look at diabetes in the next video whenever the body can't maintain these normal glucose levels. So let's take a look and see what happens, what we want to do to lower high blood glucose levels, and that is going to be when we call on insulin. So let's say that we just took in a bunch of food, we just ate a nice meal, and our glucose levels are starting to rise. Insulin is going to be secreted from the pancreas because it's responding to the glucose levels, a humoral stimulation right here. And its main thing is it is going to go in and it is going to it is going to allow glucose to get into the different cells of the body. That's how it goes in and lowers blood glucose levels. So once blood glucose levels fall, beta cells stop secreting insulin, and then we'll take a look and see what happens after that. So let's take a look at the whole homeostatic mechanism that is occurring here in the with insulin, I guess I should say. So once your blood glucose levels increase, again, usually after a meal, what happens is it stimulates the pancreas, and the pancreas is going to release insulin, and there is insulin right there. So what insulin does, the main thing that insulin does, is it is going to take the glucose that's floating around into the bloodstream, and it needs to get rid of it somehow. So the way that it gets rid of it is it actually moves it into the cells. So what it does, so let's say here's a cell right here. What it does is it causes the cell to go in and make these special proteins that are going to be embedded in the plasma membrane, and those proteins are kind of like a way to get glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cell itself. It's kind of like a shuttle to get it into the cell. And what do you think the cells are going to do with the glucose? Yeah, it's actually going to use it for cellular respiration to make to turn it into energy right there. So that's what it's going to do. Remember, insulin works on that whole second messenger system. You don't have to know all the specifics behind it, but this is one of those where it binds to an insulin receptor on the cell membrane, and then it's going to work that way. So that's one way we can get glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells, is that way. Another thing is the liver can use it. The liver is going to use it to store, and that's what this is, increased glycogenesis. So we are going to make some glycogen by just taking glucose and putting it in that way. Not all cells require insulin. So that's what that little thing is at the bottom. Insulin not required for glucose uptake in all cells. Some things don't have to have insulin to take in glucose, like neurons, kidney cells. There should be a comma, hepatocytes, erythrocytes. All of those, glucose has another little mechanism that it uses to get glucose into the cells. If you think about it, it needs to be rather quick for neurons. And that's the reason why. But insulin is going to be required for all other cells to be able to take in glucose. Let's take a look at a couple of other effects that are going to happen. It also increases lipogenesis, so it takes fatty acids from the bloodstream and it brings it to the adipose tissue so they can go in and create these new fat cells. Also, taking amino acids, it helps get amino acids into muscle cells, and it stimulates protein anabolism. So that's a couple of other things that can happen. So now let's take a look at the opposite effect. Let's say that it's in between meals. We've been sleeping, and obviously when we're sleeping, that's a long time in between meals. So our blood sugar levels are going to dip low. So we need to raise blood glucose levels, and the way to do that is glucagon. So chemoreceptors, again, they're constantly monitoring glucose levels, and what they're going to do is they're going to go to the alpha cells and tell the alpha cells to secrete glucagon that way. So let's take a look at what happens here. There's the stimulus, decreased blood glucose levels, tells the pancreas, glucagon secreted. So remember where glucose is at this point. Well, we can't go to all cells, right? Because if the cells that we had just talked about in insulin, they just used it for cell respiration, so we can't get it that way. Where are some other ways that we can get it? Well, the liver, remember we have our storage in the liver, it's like our savings account. We can go over to the liver and tell it, hey, we need some glucose. And so that's what it's going to do, is it's going to break down the glycogen and pop that glucose into the bloodstream that way. But remember that we can also convert other things into glucose. So we can go to the adipose cells and tell it to break down that way, or not break down that way, but it's going to tell the fat cells to break down lipids so it can spit out the glycerol and fatty acids. And that's another way that we can do it. So it will go in and increase glucose and fatty acid levels in the blood. But interesting enough, it doesn't do anything to amino acids. It doesn't go to muscles to tell it to break down protein. So it's going to do that until those glucose levels get back to that magic number that it needs to be at. So in the next video, we're going to be taking a look at diabetes. So until next time.